Hello, everyone. Welcome back to EF Live, our weekly show coming at you every single week. Today, I'm your host, Jake Davis, as always, and I have with me Kurt Phillip. Kurt, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
I'm,
How are
I'm
you?
doing awesome. It's a very sunny day down here in Florida, and couldn't ask for anything different. Where are you coming from?
I wish I could say the same, man. I'm in Brighton at the moment, and it's been cold and rainy. So,
Well,
good time to get some work
Well,
done.
in the fall, I will be moving to upstate New York, so hopefully it's not terrible, but I have a feeling it's going to be awful. Guys, welcome to the show. This week we're going to be talking about CRO and what that means and how you can utilize it to help your business. Before we get to that, though, just kind of want to check in. How's everyone doing? Where's everyone from? Let's see. I'm for the first time ever using a dual monitor setup, which is pretty cool actually. So I have uh, everything set up here, all my software and stuff, and then over here I have the YouTube and the Facebook. So get in YouTube and Facebook, chat with us, let us know where you're coming from, let us know how you're doing, and we'll be doing Q&A at the end of the show. So whoever if you have a question, definitely get in there. And then we're going to actually go ahead and pick a couple of the best questions to send some free stuff to, maybe a t-shirt or something like that. So yeah, it's pretty awesome. And welcome to the show. We hope you're doing well. But speaking of talking about CRO, we need to first establish why Kurt is someone who's worth listening to. So Kurt, who are you?
Yeah. Good question. I asked myself the same question, but um, I've been around for a while. A lot of guys in our audience would have seen me in different businesses. I've had an affiliate agency. I've had a SEO agency, and sort of been around one of the early adopters. Started traveling when the Wi-Fi first came out and stuff. So I've seen it evolve quite a lot. And then recently, a couple of years ago, I was partners with Matt Diggity in a company called LeadSpring, and then moved on to start my own company called CRO, by now onto Convertica, which is growing in leaps and bounds. So yeah, we've got
Mm.
a lot of info to share from having a lot of clients and running a lot of tests in the last 12 months. And yeah, moved out here recently to the UK for a bit of a change from living in Asia for the last 6 years. But yeah.
A little bit of change. I mean, your accent says that that's pretty normal living in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from New Zealand originally, so I mean, especially people from North America can have a hard time picking it. But yeah, moved out to Thailand when I was about 21, so been out there for nearly 10 years. But time for a change, time to move on to some bigger and better things, and move out to Europe, especially now while the summer's sort of kicking in. So
Yeah, what did you? I'll be in Asia this summer. I'll be in Vietnam. Do we have nice weather to look forward to this summer?
I mean, if you're talking about a North American summer, which is generally June through so sort of August, right? Well, in Thailand during that time, it's fairly rainy season, but it's pretty
Mm.
nice. I mean, you'll still have it'll still be sunny most of the day, but just during the afternoons you'll have a bit of a downpour. But yeah, it's not bad, man. It's a good time to be there. All year round's
Mm.
good, apart from sort of the start of the year where it gets very, very hot. So
So, I guess a big question I have for you, Kurt, is to
Mhm.
start this whole thing off. What is CRO?
So CRO, there hasn't been a lot of discussion until recently about CRO, because I don't think people really understood the power of it. But essentially, it's optimizing your websites for more conversions off your current traffic and convert your current visitors you have already, whether you're generating traffic via PPC, SEO. Most of our clients are SEO clients. It's about maximizing the profit off, or maximizing the revenue and profit of those existing visitors by and changing design and content on your actual website. And and testing the changes against the original, so you can have some data
Mhm.
behind that on what performs better. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is basically what we're going to be talking about, and how you should optimize all of that, and kind of get the data to know what you should be doing with your business. A couple of things I want to note before we just completely dive in is if you're going to Seller Summit in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, myself, Mike Swig, a couple of the other EF team members are going to be down there, and you can come meet us and have a come hang out with us. Swig is actually normally behind the scenes anyway, manning the Facebook and the YouTube, just making sure everything's live and well. And he is actually on a plane right now, so looking forward to seeing him in a bit. But again, guys, question and answer at the end. Let us know if you have anything you want us to talk about, because this is really your show, designed to give you guys all the tools that you need. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump on in here. So the
Awesome.
first thing. Oh, well, that got not the right ratio. Let me just fix that real quick. Yay. Oh well. Okay. Fixed. Perfect. Okay, so again, we're going to be talking about understanding CRO and the fundamentals of split testing. Getting that data that Kurt was talking about, and how it can help you and improve your business. So let's go ahead and dive into our first topic of understanding CRO. So we've already kind of touched on what is CRO, but Kurt, how does it all work?
So I think that was the biggest reason for. I mean, I've been sharing a lot of information, but I think that was the biggest reason why a lot of people in our sort of internet marketing sphere haven't got into it, is because it's hard to know where to start. A lot of these big blogs that talk about CRO don't have any sort of step-by-step things they teach you to get started, say on an affiliate site or on a lead gen site or on a e-commerce website. So essentially what it is finding your either your biggest revenue earners, your biggest income earner pages, or your biggest traffic pages, and then optimizing them for conversions. Now, where we're seeing the biggest increase in conversions at the moment on our clients is on mobile. Now, I'm going off track a bit here, because on mobile, no one has optimized for conversions that we see. So what we do is we get the highest traffic page, for instance. We'll then optimize that by. Okay, I'm getting a bit distracted here. Let me backstep. So essentially, what we do is we create a variation B, and we have the control, which is the variation A, and we test them against each other. So we throw 50% of the traffic at one variation, 50% at the other, and let the test run for 1,000, 2,000 visits, something like that. Pull a report on the test, and then look at what's performing better, and rinse and repeating that process.
And is it
Um,
designed to be, you know, you say the first 1,000 or 2,000 visits, is that
mhm.
designed to be running against a highly targeted audience?
So essentially, with us, I mean, you can segment the different audiences in the back end of, say, VWO, which is the software we use, VWO.com, and you can segment the different channels. But primarily with our clients, 90% of their traffic is from SEO, which remains pretty consistent. They're ranking for review type keywords and buy type keywords. So yeah, you can segment different audiences in the back end. But that's a bit more advanced stuff, especially when you're starting out. You don't normally, if you've got a consistent stream of traffic coming in, just keep everything the same and play around with that last variable, which is the pages, page layouts, and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Um, because most of our clients are SEO, and I know a lot of the EF listings are SEO too. One of the biggest, I think, roadblocks to people getting started with it was understanding if it's safe for SEO and how to do it safely for SEO when you're running two different variations of a page. And that can be easily done with either running an A/B test, which is changing elements within a page, whether that's buttons, call to actions, images, layouts, and stuff like that, or running a split URL test, which is where we duplicate the page we're trying to optimize. We actually duplicate it and then put a canonical tag in the header pointing back to the original page, which Google doesn't index, and then only indexes the original page, and that makes it safe for SEO, which gives you a lot more flexibility because it allows you to do whatever you want on that variation page without any harm for SEO.
And what kind of tools do you use to run these tests?
So the split testing software has come a long way in the last few years. We used to use a bunch of different tools, but now we find that we can just use VWO because it has heat maps. So you need heat maps to start. You need split testing software, and you need some understanding of HTML and CSS generally. But now you can generally get VWO or Optimizely, and I haven't played around with too much on Google Optimize, which is another tool. And they have pretty much everything incorporated in the one backend now, on the one platform. But if you're looking to get started, I think Hotjar is a good way to. It's like heat mapping software, so it tells you what your visitors are up to on your pages and where to get started, where the sort of high flow areas are on the pages to start.
Is there anything really specific? You mentioned a lot of different tools that you could use. Is there anything really specific that you look for when looking at software like this?
In terms of
functionality, like
what it accomplishes?
and what it accomplishes.
Yeah. So you need two things. You need to identify hotspot areas. So you need to identify areas that have a high click rate or high mouse rate, where the users are sort of spending, where their eye contact is going. And by doing that, you can use heat maps to find that. And then the second tool is split testing software. Once you've identified the hotspot areas, where do you start testing? What do you start testing, and how do you test it? So, I mean, you need high amount of page views, but if you're split testing areas that no one's clicking on or paying any attention to anyway, then you're not going to have enough data over sort of a 2 week to a month period, which is what you want to sort of aim for. Otherwise, yeah, you're just not going to get enough data coming through, because you need people actually taking an action on it for it to sort of recognize as a conversion or whatever.
And this is all super important, as we've touched upon in previous EF Live episodes. You really want to limit the amount of kind of dead areas of your business. You want to have every part of your business performing optimally. You don't want to have, say you have a business, you're bringing in $20,000 a month in profit, but that's from 2 products, and your third product is just bleeding money. You're putting money into inventory. It's not selling. People return it. This is data that you want to have in order to be able to, improve the business and improve your profits, improve the revenue for the business. And surprisingly enough, this is actually something that is fundamental for even businesses that aren't e-commerce, like affiliate sites. And we're going to touch on that in a little bit. Don't you think, Kurt?
Yeah, I mean, we've been working a lot with businesses lately, not just on the CRO side, but we're sort of, the businesses moving into more of a like business consulting type situation, where a lot of people are focusing on the wrong areas. So we like to focus on like using the 80-20 principle. What areas are bringing in the bulk of the revenue, and those are the ones we'll optimize. So we have a lot of multi-channel clients that they have multiple avenues of affiliate, lead gen, all on the one site, and they just don't know where to start. Well, we take it back to the 80-20 principle. What areas can we start working on first to get the biggest increases, and then start to work down the list of those insights. So absolutely, I think always look at it on where the most revenue is being generated, and start to double down on those areas to get. Because if you could create a 50% increase in conversions on a low performing item because you want to bring it up, well, overall that's only going to be whatever, it's only going to be a very small increase in overall revenue.
So you've touched on this. You touched on this a little bit earlier, but can you just kind of expand upon making it safe for SEO? How could it be unsafe for SEO?
Well, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding on how the software works, but there's a lot of also, I mean, I've seen some people and different blogs just send different information around. They don't fully understand SEO. Now, being an SEO myself since I was very young, that was of the utmost importance when we started this company. So that's something we always check first when we start. I think when you're doing when you're doing A/B testing, which is just flipping out areas. So it might be you're just split testing a button, or you're split testing um, a headline or something on your page. There's only JavaScript switching that out, so it's not going to be that big a deal. Google will index the actual original page, and because it's post load, that it flips out that text or button, it's not going to matter
Mm.
too much. The confusion is when you start doing a split URL test. Now, we just finished a big campaign for Empire Flippers actually, where we had to fully split test a whole different funnel against the original one. And those sort of things, it does get quite complicated when you're trying to keep SEO in mind too. But what you got to just make sure of, and an easy way to keep it safe is just add a canonical tag to the header, which points back to the original page that you want Google to honor, and it'll always be safe then. The difference is when, let's just say you're ranking for snippets, you have to be very careful with those type of things because if you start to change around the schema markup or the table markup on your pages in your split test, when you roll those live, they may have some impact. So you have to be careful of that. We don't like to play around with clients' snippet areas that are ranking. For instance, if it's a table or a top 5 list or whatever. So you have to be careful at that sort of stuff. But so it might look fine when you're split testing it, but when you actually roll it out live and it gets re-indexed on your live page, there can be some issues sometimes. But the good thing is if that does happen, you know how to get it back. Roll the you just roll the original schema back and get it refetches Google and it'll come back.
You,
So if that does ever happen.
you mentioned quite a few different types of tests here. So,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of test would you say is the most important to be running here?
In terms of a split URL test or an
Yes.
A/B test, is
Yeah.
that what you mean? Yeah. So a split URL test is for really complicated redesigns of a page. So, I mean, if you're split testing a comparison table, then you want to, I mean, that's harder to do on a split URL test because, I mean, on an A/B test because you have to change multi levels of code and so on. But if you're just split testing a button, let's just say you've got a home page with an opt-in and a call to action you want to test. Maybe you want to put a photo of a pretty girl in the header and then a call to action saying click here versus subscribe or something like that. Then that can be done on an A/B test where it's just flipping out one
Mm-hmm.
element on the page. Whereas if it's a full, for instance, if we're changing 4 or 5 elements at once, then it'll be a split URL test. Or you want to completely, like we did with Empire Flippers, completely split test a whole different funnel against the original, then more complicated. That's an easy way to work it out. If you're trying to just test one element or one button, use an A/B test. It's much quicker and easy to set up. Whereas a split URL test, um, it's a bit more of a workaround, but only use it if you're doing complicated
Mm-hmm.
changes. Yeah.
So, I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I could see a thought to this being, hey, I'm not selling products. How do I need to test them? How can an affiliate site utilize these kinds of tests?
Yeah, so again, it always goes back to the same theory or the same thought process behind a split testing campaign, whether that's lead gen, affiliate, or e-commerce. So what we'll do is we'll look at the top 5 pages that are bringing in revenue for the site. Now, a lot of clients don't actually set this up. They'll set up the site and they'll just have an affiliate sub ID from Amazon going across their whole site. Now, the first thing I recommend doing, if that is the case, is to set up a separate Amazon sub ID for each page so that you can work out what pages are bringing in the most revenue. Once you've done that, then you can get your top 3 or 5 pages based on revenue, and then start to split test those areas, start to get some sort of insight. And it's not always the top 5 for traffic either. Sometimes it's, some of the lower traffic pages have a higher revenue products listed on them. So, yeah, once you've done that, then when you install heat maps, you'll be able to see how many people spend time just in the top above the fold. So it's very important, or just below the fold. So you'll see a lot of sites that have comparison tables, for instance, which are really popular right now, and we'll start split testing different comparison tables. A lot of these plugins that are going around are actually really, really bad for conversions in terms of how cluttered they are, how much information they allow you to put in to them, and it just makes it confusing for the user. You've got to always remember that a comparison table is for someone who already knows what they want. They just want a quick comparison, 3 to 5 products, to show them, okay, here, I know that's what I do when I'm looking for, say, best computer chair or something. I'll type it into Google and I'm ready to buy. I just want to see what one suits me. Is it the highest quality? Is it the most economical? Is it a gamer's chair? Whatever. And you have all those different options for the different type of clients in the header. And then so we'll test those first. Now, it's very important to always just test one element at a time. So if you're going to test a comparison table, don't go and test the mini review areas down below that comparison table, because if, let's just say, the comparison table increases 30%, but the mini review areas decrease 30%, you've just offset your wins. So it's always important to just do one thing at a time on the page, or one area at a time.
And if you're looking for an example of the types of content that he's talking about, like the comparison tables, last week we went through and covered all the different types of content that you're going to see on an Amazon associate or affiliate site. So if you're looking for more information like that, go ahead and check all of that stuff out. And also, if you do have any questions about what we're talking about today, definitely let us know on Facebook or in the YouTube chat. And we'll try to get to all your questions at the end. Kurt, so when talking about the affiliate sites, so a lot of times you see affiliate sites that not only recommend one kind of product, but like multiple different kinds of products in the same website, and different niches. And how do the strategies of CRO change when you're not just changing one type? It's not just one type of niche. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the great thing about, let's just say, they're SEO sites for simplicity. The cool thing is, each site, every page in itself is ranking for a different keyword. Therefore, it's ranking for a different consumer awareness. It's ranking for a different level of buyer intent. So it's very important that every page is tested. We have a lot of people coming to us say, give us the best layout and we'll roll it out site wide. Now, we did a test a couple of months ago now, sorry, where we tested 10 pages, the top 10 pages on a site as a example. And we went through and ran the same layout on the top 10 pages. And what we found is every page responds differently. So I think a lot of these plugins that are out there saying, we'll get you 200% increase, we'll get you 150% increase, are complete lies, because what we noticed is rolling that same layout on every page gives startling differences. So the difference was 3 performed much better. I'm talking 20 to 30% increase in clicks over to Amazon. 2 to 3 were either 2 or 3 minus or 2 or 3% above, and 3 or 4 of them were actually lower conversions. So that just debunks that whole strategy of these plugins that everyone uses that you see. I mean, there's probably 80% affiliate sites use the same plugins, whether that's Table Press or whether that's a couple of the other new ones that are supposed to be responsive and stuff. You need to individually test each of these on every single page in order to get an accurate idea on how it's performing.
So Tom Trial, first off, Tom, how are you doing? Asking about a specific listing, what happened to that listing. Without looking at that one, I don't know off the top of my head, but sometimes businesses get delisted for whatever reason, often because sometimes the seller decides that they don't want the business to be listed anymore. If you have concerns about that specific business, it disappeared. Yeah, I would guess that it was just delisted due to the seller wanting to pull it from the marketplace or something like that. Kurt, so we have kind of the biggest business model that you would think you would want to do this with, testing out different products and stuff like that. Let's talk about CRO for e-commerce sites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and this is where the strategy changes a little bit, but essentially, the cool thing about e-commerce sites is you get to track everything from end to end through to the sale. Now, the issue with Amazon sites is there's a bit of a gray area on where you, for instance, it would be great if you could put the conversion pixel when the person buys, then it would make our job a lot easier. You have to go and pull the reports and actually work it out manually. But with an e-commerce site, you can actually put the tracking pixel of a sold product on the actual conversion page. So it's actually a lot easier to get much more accurate data on an e-commerce site. This is why a lot of CRO companies exclusively work with e-commerce sites because they're a lot bigger, but also the accuracy is like down to a fine point. So essentially, our process is similar, but it somewhat deviates a little bit. Now, it's hard to work out where to get started with an e-commerce site, but we just use the same process. An affiliate site, we look at the top 5 pages to run our tests. Now, we use the top 5 pages in terms of traffic, usually on an e-commerce site because of data collection insights. So we'll go through and we'll go through and duplicate the page and make our changes to the whether it's a category listing page or whether it's a product page. Now, I'll go and talk about product pages because that's the most popular. Those are the most popular pages on a e-commerce site. So you'd go through. I mean, the best thing to do is look at Amazon. They're the best in the business. They have an algorithm inside Amazon that's constantly split testing 24/7 all day long, micro tests all the time. That's why all the pages always look different. So one thing that Amazon always does is has very clear product images. It has a very clear title on what the product is. It then always has ratings below the header, below the title. It then has how many people have rated, and then also a click down to where you can actually read the reviews. Now, I know personally, every time I go to Amazon, I always click the reviews and read the reviews. Now, have those sort of features part of your site. I mean, it's not easy to do if you're starting out a new site, but it's something to always think about moving forward. Now, the next step is most people on the internet, we want everything super quick now. We want to be able to make a decision in like 2 seconds. So when you have these review stars, below it you have price with obviously a sales markup price. It always works well. Have the price nice and clear, and then below the price have 3 to 5 benefits or features to the user, and then the buy button. And then below is an in-depth product description, and then below that is the reviews and so on. That's the way to do it because you want to be able to, the consumer wants to be able to go, boom, get a snapshot of what the product is. If they're hot to buy already, they can just hit the buy now button and go from there.
How do you know when, and this is kind of a CRO split testing, question in general, but how do you know when it's time to run these tests?
Do you mean in terms of when to finish the test or when
it's time to start? Should you, no matter how the business is doing, should you run these tests, or do you need to look for like a warning sign of, hey, something's not doing as well as it could?
No, I think the hard part for us is we get a lot of customers that come through too, and they want to get started, but we just can't accept them due to traffic. So our business model is purely reliant on visitors. So if you have, say, 3,000 views a month on a page, then it's sort of on the borderline of just being able to split test for it. And this is just for data analysis. So this is what I said when I said earlier, get your top 5 pages. Generally, those will be where the bulk of the traffic is made from. So that's for insight. Once you work out one page layout for a product on e-commerce sites, you can generally roll that out side-wide. It's a little bit different to an affiliate site where they have different buyer intent keywords coming in, because if it's got 50 a month or 100 views a month, you just can't get the data. You can't get statistical significance, which is enough data that it can have a high percentage of being a successful split test.
No, it definitely makes sense. So again, with e-commerce now, so how many different products do you suggest or pages do you suggest running in the same test? You said top 5 pages. Is that your general rule?
Now these are all separate. These are all separate tests. So each page has its own test
Mm-hmm.
going on. So yeah, you just get a page, identify what the goals are. Now, if it's an e-commerce site, your goal is for them to purchase a product. Well, another goal is also that you would track is a click on the buy now button, because you'll be able to see what the drop off is. And there's obviously, if you can see there's a big drop off between people actually getting to the purchase page and the buy now, then you can optimize in between that too, because you can see there's some friction going on. And here's a free tip: if you've got a digital product you're selling on an e-commerce store, remove the whole cart and checkout and try and incorporate the buying of the product onto that same page, instead, because it's just an industry standard that everyone still uses checkouts and carts. But with digital products, all you need is email and
Mm-hmm.
credit card. So
So moving along here, I think the you know, I guess the follow up to my question before of when do you start is how do you know when the test is done? How do you know you have the results you need? When do you end the test?
mhm. Yeah, so there's this thing called statistical significance. So you need enough data where it just hasn't been, it's not just left up to chance that variation B and A perform better. So at Convertica, we have a actual backend API dashboard that has all our tests running. And when there's a big enough spread, and this might get a bit confusing, so I'll try and explain it as simple as I can. But when there's a big enough spread on the test, so let's just say the variation B, the split test, is outperforming the original by 30%, then you'll need far less visitors to make sure that test is confirmed than something that's 2 or 3%
Mm-hmm.
difference, because it could just be an anomaly that the A or B. So we don't actually call any tests that are too low, because there's just too much chance for it being just a false
Mm-hmm.
reading. But if it's That's why we always try to aim for 20 to 50% with our tests, because that, and it's 100% confirmed that it's actually performing better than the original. So it comes down to how much more the test page is performing against the original, and how many views you have. So as a general rule of thumb, somewhere between 2 and 3,000 views and around 10 to 30% conversion increase will give you a solid defining data on
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah.
So the last kind of site that we want to talk about today are lead gen sites. So can you just kind of describe the CRO process for lead gen sites?
So this is probably my favorite type of site to work on. Now we've just finished doing this on the Empire Flippers website. So on the valuation tools, a great example of how we optimize, like with a live sort of site that you can see. Um, so essentially, when back in the day, or back when the internet first started getting kicked off, it was a very different time. Long forms asking for a lot of information for clients. Because essentially, a lead gen site is you selling a bunch of data to a third party provider that someone has submitted through your website, or using it for your own business. So what we sort of thought was, okay, if we make it more like a frictionless experience and make it more like an app, make it more intuitive, and make it more gamified, I like to say, then conversions are going to be higher. So that's something that we roll out on all our lead gen sites now, is try to make it feel like an app. Don't have 10 text fields. Can you eliminate um, data input by having multiple choice, where they can just click with their
Mm-hmm.
thumbs, or click with their mouse? Can you like, if it's a calendar, why would you get them to type in a date when you can just get a pop-up and they just click the date and stuff like that? So I think people are used to having these very frictionless experiences on their phones now, so that becomes the standard. So if you've got a lead capture or a lead gen site, try to, and I mean, we've gone through this in detail this week. The case study is coming out on the Empire Flippers site, so we show all the tools we use and everything, and we go through this whole process in detail. But try to make it as frictionless as possible by making the user do as little as possible. That's a great philosophy when it comes to the lead gen site. So if you need to ask 10 questions, how can you do that in the most efficient way? By asking the simplest questions first. Because if a great example is Agoda, where um, they make you enter your credit card and a lot of details at the end after you've already nearly finished filling it all out. Or flight sites are a great example where they make the easiest stuff at the start and then you're already invested in the process and you ask the harder stuff at the end, you have a less likelihood of dropping off. So yeah, ask the multiple choice questions at the start. If just have a look at the valuation tool on the lead gen on the Empire Flippers website, and it'll make a lot more sense. Try to automate a lot of the sliders, and yeah, you'll have a much higher conversion rate.
So the most important thing when running these kinds of tests for these sites, in your opinion, are looking at something and thinking to yourself, hey, how can I turn this into as seamless an experience for the user? Correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to keep them in that sort of subconscious state where it's like still playful and fluid. You never want them to go and like, especially a text field on your phone, trying to enter a text field and then you misspell it and trying to have to. It's just you try to think about how many times that you need user input and try and minimize that as much as possible.
So, can you talk about some of the sort of nightmares that you've seen with testing?
Well, I think that the hardest bit is at the start, making sure you have a good strategy laid out. So, for instance, I'll use the Empire Flippers again as an example, it was a very complex website with a lot of different data points and a lot of different goals and a lot of different areas that needed to be identified in order to get a clear reading on it. Now, when we first started doing, and this will be good for this audience, is when we first started doing affiliate site, it can be a bit confusing as to what you track. So let's just say you have an affiliate site with top 10 brooms or something like that. I'll use it as an example. Now, let's just say you make a split test change and the number one product now gets 30% higher clicks, but what if the number 6 product has gone down in 30%? Like, how do you track all that to make sure you've actually got a higher lift overall? That can be where it gets confusing. So with an affiliate site, for instance, make sure you're tracking all links and combining all links to Amazon and combining the total clicks over to Amazon rather than just tracking one or two. Just track all the outbound links on a page. And this is where it does get confusing too, because a lot of the split testing platforms don't actually allow you to have that capability in their backend. So you actually need to pull this data from the raw data export, which a lot of people don't even know, which a lot of people we've talked to don't even know exists. So, yeah, these little things. I mean, where there's a lot of confusing stuff when it comes to CRO, but just being able, if you want to get started with a campaign, identify what your goals are for the campaign, identify a goal that you want to achieve for the campaign, and then start to work backwards.
So, guys, we're going to be moving into our featured listing and then Q&A parts of the show. So definitely get some questions in Facebook or YouTube if you have them for us. You know, it could be about CRO, it could be about content, it could be about anything that you want to ask us. It could be about listings, like we had that question earlier. We really want to give content to help you guys and answer the questions you have. But before we do get to the questions that we have, I do want to talk about a featured listing on Empire Flippers, and it's got an interesting topic, or there's I have an interesting topic to talk about in relation to this business, talking about testing and everything. So we're going to look at listing 43906. It's an Amazon Associates, AdSense, and affiliate business in the general niche. There are the numbers. You can see it's making about $24,000 a month in profit. Quite significant. Again, empireflippers.com/listing/43906 if you would like more information. I guess my big question to you, Kurt, is when when you do have different traffic sources, how do you run these tests? How should you focus them?
Yeah, so a lot of the good, I mean, as long as you're tracking and can identify, I don't know too much about this actual listing in particular, but as long as you know where the revenue is coming from in terms of the traffic source, then it's very easy to identify where to start split testing. So you can do this in analytics. You can identify as long as your conversions have been tracked down to the actually in the back end of analytics, which I'm sure this site is, then you can work through and run tests to just this segmentation in VWO or in Optimizely or Google Optimize. You can actually just say to the software, if this person comes from Google Organic, we show them this version. If it comes from Facebook, we show them this version. And you can actually pull that apart and split test
Mm-hmm.
them differently. Yeah. But it's the same strategy as before. Like once you've identified, let's just say you've identified that, 90% of the conversions come from search, organic search, then just test to that and see if you can identify some quick wins just to search traffic, and then maybe send your Facebook traffic to a different landing page and test, because obviously you don't have that flexibility with SEO. So with a Facebook page, you can literally make 10 different pages for each ad campaign group. So yeah, whereas SEO, you need to sort of be reliant on the one page because that's how it's
Mm-hmm.
ranking.
So, with would you recommend, let's say you have a business where you are selling e-commerce products or products over e-commerce, you're drop shipping, you are doing Amazon FBA, you are doing Amazon Associates, all of these different channels.
Hmm.
How do you know where to start your testing? Obviously, you eventually want to test them all to figure out what works best for the business. But is it as simple as look at the part of the business that is generating the most revenue and then go from there?
Well, there's going to be a bunch of different things that come into that, right? Let's just say, I mean, a client, they might have a bunch of inventory that's sitting there, so they need to push that. That question's hard to answer because there's a lot of different goals that the business owner would need. But yeah, I mean, it just depends on what you want to achieve. But essentially, if you're just trying to increase revenue with CRO and there's no other goals, then yeah, you look at the pages that are creating the most revenue, or the pages that have the highest traffic that are money keywords that aren't performing that well too. It's just a top-down approach. So we get started with the top five just for insights, and then once you get to understand the character of the site, the personality of a site, the how the users that are coming in on that keyword interact with the page, then you can start to go down the site. But we just if we do 20 pages at once, it's very, very confusing on what's going on. So just keep it really simple. Even start with the top three sometimes. If you just want to because sometimes you forget why you've done something and it's hard to manage. And so we keep it to five, but we've got a lot of staff. So I recommend even keeping it to like one or two at the
Mm-hmm.
start till you've got the process down, because everyone wants results yesterday, but it's about the main thing with CRO is managing what you're doing and being able to decipher that data and remember why you ran that test in the first place. Because from a lot of clients we talk to, they they've read my post, they'll go through and set up their first split test, and then business will take them by, and the day to day will take them by, and they've forgot why they even started the first test. So just keep it really, really simple at the start, and then you can build into the complexity later on. But just start with one, two, three pages, um, and yeah, traffic and revenue is the main thing to focus on to start. If there's no
Mm-hmm.
other goals, if it's just increasing revenue as CRO, yeah.
When you say traffic, I mean, traffic can come from a lot of different sources. We've kind of
Hmm.
focused here on SEO and organic traffic, organic pages that, we've been talking about. But would you recommend putting paid advertising to get paid traffic coming in for these tests?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't recommend that, because what happens is if you're just trying to pump the traffic, it could be non-converting traffic. It hasn't tested to convert before. Um, yeah, that's why I recommend, if you are wanting to test for different new traffic sources, is to duplicate the page that you want to test, and then optimize it just to that traffic source, and then leave, and then just because obviously with an SEO page, it has to stay there. You can't just go and like redirect the traffic. Um, and I would just go and test different pages for that different
Mm-hmm.
traffic source. But again, if it's Facebook ads, for instance, anyone can send 10,000 clicks at a page. But as we know, like PPC is a whole different beast. And I would set up individual landing pages for each of those campaigns and even different ad groups. Obviously, something with a different title on a Google AdWords group depends on what they're coming in on and so on as compared to a organic. But that's a really hard question to answer when we don't have much data to go off.
So, guys, that's gonna kind of wrap up this part of the show and bring us into our Q&A portion. And if again, if you have any questions on anything, definitely let us know and we'll get to them. If you don't have any questions, I mean, don't let us know how you're doing, where you're coming from, and remember, if we see a really good question or two, we may even send you some free stuff, like a t-shirt, like sunglasses, stuff like that. So it could be pretty cool. So let's go ahead and and slide on into our Q&A portion. So we have first question here from Andrew. What are some easy CRO improvements that I can make on a typical Amazon Associates site?
Well, I think the without knowing the site or seeing the site, a lot of our sites see huge increases on mobile. So our mind automatically goes to, okay, yeah, well, my site's responsive. Well, that's not making it optimized for mobile. So I would go through and set up a test that just segments the mobile traffic, which I've actually showed in I think my second post on convertica.org and my second last post. And it shows you how to segment data just to mobile users, and then test out some different layouts that play around with it on your mobile and see how it functions. Is it, are the call to action buttons clear? Now you have to think like, is a text call to action going to perform better than a button on mobile? From our data, no. Like text links are very hard with fat fingers to sort of click as opposed to a button. Is the button and image close to each other? Are there star ratings? I mean, you have to be careful with Amazon affiliate with that. But yeah, I would just test to mobile and even check your traffic on tablet. No one we've seen so far optimizes for tablet. I mean, it's only a small portion of traffic, but that's still a small portion of traffic that you can increase conversions on.
So, Jenny, with the question here, is there anything I can do to improve my listings for an Amazon FBA site or listing?
To be 100% honest, we don't have any data on that, so I won't act like I do. We don't. I do have some partners that work in that space of optimizing listings with headline titles and listing names, but we don't actually, because we don't have a lot of flexibility to play around with how it looks and everything's laid up. We haven't gone into that space, so I won't be able to answer that one.
Do you plan to go into that space, or is it just something that you feel since it's outside of your hands, it's in Amazon's kind of playground there, it's kind of hard to get that information?
Yeah, so even when it comes down to people with those like Wix and people with those free platforms to build on, we don't even like to touch those sites because it doesn't give us a lot of flexibility on what we can do in terms of if it's a lead capture or if it's a e-commerce site. Like it's very hard for us we don't have like a lot of our wins on an e-commerce site, which is essentially what a FBA listing is on the funnel, like when someone clicks the buy now through to the checkout page, we get a lot of wins through that process too by shortening how many steps it takes for them to actually purchase the product. So we can't actually touch that at all either because that's built into Amazon. So yeah, we don't actually we're good at what we do in terms of being focused on the three types of business models we've talked about today. But who knows? I mean, things could change as we grow and we could bring some specialists in, but at the moment it's not part of the business plan.
What about software as a service? That's another kind of common business model that you see online. Is there anything that those business owners can do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's this, essentially it's because software as a service only has a few different. I mean, okay, so software as a service is great because it allows you to create custom landing pages and custom checkout flows and stuff like that. So absolutely, it's essentially the same as, um, and again, every software as a service site is completely different, but essentially the same as what we've talked about before. Identify where the most user flow is and start to optimize them by looking at case studies, looking at other case studies out on the web, like doing research on what tests have been run and testing them against your own website. We never assume something's going to work better than another version, but we just test everything until we get a winner. It's all about experimentation,
Hmm.
hypothesis.
I'm just trying to think if there are any other kinds of business models that we haven't touched on other than, some more Amazon ones like Amazon merch, um, which Amazon merch I'm assuming would fall under the same umbrella as Amazon FBA, where it's.
And it's the 80/20, right? So it's like for us too, 20% of the business model. So um, WordPress websites, for instance, we almost exclusively only work with WordPress
Mhm.
websites because all our dev team is like experts in WordPress. Now, when we get a Magento or when we get we just had a client lately, Ruby on Rails, it's sort of like we're going to be much less fluid and have a much more friction fueled process because we don't understand how the code works or we have to bring in someone from outside or whatever. So we like to focus on becoming an expert in WordPress sites and Magento. We've got the Magento down pat now, but it's generally and custom CMSs where it's just HTML and PHP. But when it comes into these different frameworks, it can get quite
Mhm.
complicated.
So, guys, we're running out of time here, but Kurt, this is fun, isn't it?
I love it, man. I talk about this stuff all day
Hmm.
long. So if I can spread the word of CRO, man, it's one of my
And
favorite things.
you know, it may seem like a lot of just, oh, swap this out, swap that out, try to get data on, wait for the data, get a large enough sample size, but at the end of the day, you don't want to have one part of your business bleeding you dry. So if
Exactly.
there are different parts that you can kind of test to see, hey, is this part doing as well as it could? Maybe if I made this, font blue, it'll respond better or something like that. Something small could make a big difference in your business. And especially if you're trying to sell your business on Empire Flippers, I mean, having one big dead part of your business is not, preferable when you can, fix that up.
And I mean, if you've got a website that's making say 20,000 US a month, and you increase your bottom line revenue by